Present.
Blackwell.
Present.
Campbell.
Present.
Pledge of allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Looking for approval for the agenda.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Dockery, second by Campbell to approve the agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Nays? The ayes have it. Public comment. Is there anybody in the public who would like to address the council this evening? Okay. Before we go any farther, I see a young man in black back there. Are you here from government class?
Yep.
Can you state your name and what town you're from? You can stand up, please.
My name is Jason Garnica. I'm from Eldridge, and what else did you ask?
That's it. When the meeting's over, anybody at this table can sign your paperwork.
Okay.
All right, on to number 5A, consideration to approve the city council minutes from the regular city council meeting on October 6, 2025.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Yossi, second by Collins to approve the regular council minutes from October 6, 2025. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Nays? The ayes have it. 5B, consideration to approve the committee of whole minutes from the October 6, 2025 meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Campbell, second by Yossi to approve the committee of whole minutes from October 6, 2025. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Nays? The ayes have it. 5C, consideration to approve the bills payable. Scott, do you have any questions?
Nope.
Adrian?
Tonight, no, Mayor,
Okay.
the bills, no.
Brian?
Mine were answered part of the meeting.
Okay. Ryan?
No questions.
Dan?
No questions here.
All right. With that being said, do I hear a motion to approve the bills payable?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion by Blackwell, second by Collins to approve the bills payable. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Nay? The ayes have it. 5D, consideration to approve a liquor license renewal for the Tasty Cafe.
The chief not being here, was there any complaints?
No, I think that was
any
his number,
concerns
wasn't it?
from
Yep.
He signed
anyone?
off on it.
You said, okay,
He reviewed it himself.
already.
Yep.
If there's no concerns or further discussion, I'd like to make a motion for approval.
Could we use the microphones, please?
I am.
Mr. Yossi, thank you for the polite reminder, sir. How are you this evening? Better? Good, good. And if there is no further discussion and chief just looked at it, it's all the concerns then from council, I'd like to make a motion for approval.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion by Blackwell, second by Collins to approve the liquor license renewal for the Tasty Cafe. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Nays? The ayes have it. 6A, consideration of the second reading of ordinance 2025-25, amending fire hydrant. Jeff, can I call on you? Has anybody called in on this?
Yeah, thank you, Your Honor. We've received no calls on this one.
Thank you.
Make a motion to approve the second reading ordinance 2025-25 as presented.
Second.
Motion by Dockery, second by Yossi to approve the second reading of ordinance 2025-25 as presented. Roll call.
Dockery.
Aye.
Yossi.
Aye.
Blackwell.
Aye.
Campbell.
Aye.
Collins.
Aye.
Second reading passes. On to 6B, consideration to approve a 5-year contract extension proposal from Allied Services doing business as Public Services of Bettendorf for the city's solid waste collection and disposable and recycling collection services. And I believe also Nevada included, it was requested some information on what it would look like if we went into garbage business. Nevada, can I call on you?
Thank you, Mayor. There's a memo in your packet that includes some of the cost information that I was able to put together for just general high-level overview costs for what it would cost the city to manage their garbage and recycling in-house. I included in those cost projections the cost for a new truck, and then we would need to have one for recycling and garbage, and then a backup either available or on hand for garbage in case we would have one of the trucks down. And also included the 95-gallon totes. We would need one for garbage and one for recycling for each of the households. We currently have 2,184 households on our route with Republic. The tipping fee for Scott County landfill at $34.75 a ton for municipal waste. Personnel compensation package ranging from $86,500 to $98,500, depending on what insurance benefits those employees would have. And then put all of those costs together for what we would need to run this service in-house. Again, that's 2 of each of the totes for each of the households, approximately 2 full-time public works employees. The recycling fees are a little bit harder to project because the cost difference in those can vary. There's a lot of variables involved. They can sometimes be more than the cost for the garbage. So I just took the garbage cost being what the least cost would be for recycling and used that figure. Putting that all together, what we would need to charge per household, adding a 3% increase to build some reserves for future maintenance for the trucks and improvements for the services, we would have to be charging at least $25.94 per household. And the current proposed renewal for the Republic services, the January 1, 26 through December 31, 26 is at $16.60. I did reach out to Lakeshore Recycling. They had expressed some interest in quoting. They did set up a virtual meeting with me. I went to the virtual meeting. They never showed up, and I have not heard from them since. So that's where we're at as far as other vendors.
Nevada, thank you for putting that together. I think I was the one that requested it to see where about we'd be at, and we're actually getting close to it. I mean, it all comes down to the price of the trucks, you know, and the lifespan of them, but, and if we would set them up in a depreciation schedule. But I think at the end of this next 5-year contract, council needs to look at it again, because I think it's gonna need to be even closer at that point. But thanks for putting that together.
Thanks, Nevada.
So, thank you as well for the detail that was involved with that, looking at the trucks and the toters and breaking down everything with that. Councilman Dr. Reed can attest to, we might be there within the next 5 years. As of right now, that's a significant jump, and appears to be that it's budgeted for any refuse type pickup like that. So, has this idea been ran by Tony or anybody in Public Works, and did you get any feedback from such? If we were to take this on, how he feels or how others would feel about that?
I did talk with him a little bit about the staffing needs and what he would predict. He estimated at least 2 full-time, and he looked at those operations probably running 3 to 4 days a week to be able to complete all of the households, provide those services for everyone in Eldridge. So it would be a significant chore for them to take on, and they would need to bring on some extra staff to be able to do that.
And then also with Lakeshore Recycling, so thank you for reaching back out to them. There was no other race providers here locally that expressed any interest or submitted anything as such?
We have not heard from any other providers that were interested in providing those services. I didn't reach out to any more since we hadn't heard from any. I certainly can if the council wants to look at other vendors, but the only one that I had heard that expressed interest was the Lakeshore Recycling.
Right. I don't think it's really at this particular time that there's interest out there with other providers, such as Millennium or others here. I believe they would have kind of noticed of that and submitted something. I know that Lakeshore was interested, and it's unfortunate. I guess it's no loss that they didn't reach out. My last question regarding this is, if this contract, if we approve this contract this evening, there was wording put in there with renewing this as as this contract approaches, that it would be automatic renewed. I'm a little, I like the work they're doing, I'm still a little hesitant with that. And what per se, do we as a council, as a community have regarding what that rate's gonna look like?
It's in your packet.
So, right, it's
It's in your
for,
packet for the next 5 years, what it's gonna go up.
precisely, correct.
I did clarify with Matt just to make sure. He did say that provision for auto renewal could be removed if it wasn't something the city was interested in having in the contract, but it does provide a quicker, short-term automatic renewal if both parties are happy. And for that 3-year automatic renewal, if we were to enter that phase, it would be at the same 4% increase as the first 5 years of that contract.
Well, thank you for specifying that. Councilman Collins, that's what I wanted. I didn't want us to jump to enormous fees after that and has to be stuck with one provider with that. That definitely wouldn't be fair to our citizens.
And in it also has that both parties have to agree. If we don't agree, if that, all we have to do is send them a written notice 90 days prior to the expiration of it. And by that in there, the only thing you're going to determine for the council is if they continue on for another 3 years with 4% increase, everything else will be status quo. So I don't think that's a bad deal. I mean, with that being said, I make a motion to authorize the mayor to sign the extension for the solid waste fees through December 31st, 2030.
Second.
Motion by Dockery, second by Campbell, to approve the 5-year contract extension from Allied Service doing business as Republic Service. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Nays? The ayes have it. On to 7A, consideration of resolution 2025-31, fixing a date and providing a publication of a public hearing to consider the proposal of the Fourth Amendment to the development agreement with Lewis Machine Tool. Nevada? Or Jeff, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mayor. So the council had previously discussed amending the development agreement with L&T to increase the cap $60,000 and to use that money to provide our match so that they could qualify for the high quality jobs program for the state. They get a $300,000 forgivable loan from them for that program. This is just proceeding with that plan then to set a date for the public hearing, and then at that meeting afterward, it's anticipated that that amendment would pass. I did notice one mistake in the first paragraph of the resolution. It says in the second line from the bottom, the plan is expected to be amended on November 10th, 2025. Actually, that would be November 17th. So if you proceed with approving this evening, I would ask that that date be changed to the 17th, and we can get that changed for the signature.
So Jeff, this is just set the public hearing date for the process. With that being said, I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution 2025-31 as presented and amended.
Second that.
Motion by Dockery, second by Blackwell, to approve the resolution 2025-31, fixing a date, providing publication for public hearing for the Fourth Amendment Development Agreement with Lewis Machine Tool as amended. Roll call.
Yossi,
Aye.
Blackwell,
Aye.
Campbell,
Aye.
Collins,
Aye.
Dockery.
Aye.
On to 7B. City Council discussion, information, and documentation received to date from the Elledge Volunteer Fire Company. I'm going to turn this over to Nevada, and our City Attorney Allison Wright is here tonight.
Yeah, Allison.
All right.
Get on. Sounds good. Thank you, Mayor. So as everyone knows, we've obviously been engaged in discussions with the volunteer fire company regarding their request that the city proceed with creating its own fire department. So I'm just gonna provide an update. This is no new information for city council, but just so everybody kind of has an idea of what information we do have and where we're at and what the next steps are. A little bit of history, obviously, so some of this from the council's perspective is obviously things that you know and are aware of. Kind of as a marking point, on August 14th, leadership from county, volunteer fire company, and the city all met collectively to discuss the issues that the volunteer fire company was facing, to make sure we had a really firm understanding of what their concerns were. Discussed a lot of different topics during that meeting, and a lot of questions were asked of the volunteer fire company at that time. Specifically, what resources would potentially help alleviate some of the burdens that they were facing. And so initially, at the beginning of that meeting, there was some suggestion that additional funding would allow for the volunteer fire company to hire someone to cover some of these more burdensome administrative tasks. But during the same meeting, as we discussed that, they made it very clear that money was not the answer when we walked through that. So at the conclusion of the meeting, everybody made a commitment, all the parties, if you can decide kind of county, the city, and the fire department. All parties left with the commitment and agreement to continue the discussions with one another. If anybody had questions that were not answered or they wanted to review additional information, to just keep that information line open. And obviously the city has remained completely committed to that. And we've been in constant conversations with county and with the volunteer fire company since then. Some of that has come in the form of information requests, and all of us, I think, I don't want to speak for that, spending a lot of time trying to piece together a 60+ year relationship that existed between the benefited fire district, the city, and the volunteer fire company. At some point, the volunteer fire company retained an attorney to sort of spearhead their discussions. So that's been my primary point of contact with them. But the conversations have continued without any sort of interruption. As far as I'm concerned, we've continued to communicate the same way, same questions, same information and requests that we've had. I won't go through sort of the history on some of these things, just going through sort of my notes. If there's any questions, obviously anybody let me know. Ultimately, I think the goal, county has obviously promised to provide documentation that they've had. Took some time just within the last couple weeks or so, where we actually got the documentation that created Benefited Fire District 3. So that was great that they found that, and county is currently searching for additional documentation from Benefited Fire District 3, because once it was created, it's our understanding that they separately housed and maintain their own records. So at this point, county's asked for a little bit of time to kind of continue piecing that information together. And the city, of course, wants to understand the operations of the volunteer fire company, which has been the primary impetus for our information requests and our discussions with them. As I'm sure everybody knows, the volunteer fire company has requested in a couple different ways that we essentially assume its operations. In fact, at least with me, it's been represented from their attorney that this is pretty much a turnkey operation, and that the city would just turn it into a paid department at that time. However, at the same time, the fire company has also said that they're in a dire situation. And I think all of you have heard directly from them. I'm sure members of the public here have well. And their volunteers have been pushed to such a point that they're actually threatening to hang up their keys. So I know that may have circulated, you may have heard that from different places, but I do want everyone to know, even though it's been suggested on several prior occasions, my most recent communications with their attorney, they've committed that they have no intentions of ceasing operations while these conversations continue. So we do have that commitment. And we have asked them repeatedly to please let us know from both the county and the city side if there are any resources that they are needing. We've made no guarantees, but if there is something that would be helpful to them during this time while we're all evaluating the relationship and figuring out sort of what's next, to let us know what that is. My most recent response I got from their attorney was that there is no resource that would help them at this point in time from any standpoint. So we have continued to ask that question. I've left that door open. That conversation is not over. Given that backdrop, though, obviously asking the city to proceed status quo has raised some questions. And that's obviously led us into the information gathering, fact-finding stage that we are at, especially knowing that money's not the answer. So both the county and the city, we've continued to be in conversations. We really want to understand the operations of the fire department, its financials, the call volume, and we've looked at a lot of those things. So the same tax dollars that currently are supporting the volunteer fire company would be the same tax dollars that would either go directed to the benefited fire district or the city. either collectively or separately. So that's why, you know, from a turnkey perspective, we really need to understand what's not working for them. So several months ago, it was suggested that the answer was the city hiring a full-time fire chief to oversee the affairs of the volunteer fire company and volunteers there. Obviously, when I attended a city council meeting where we addressed this publicly, but this requested essentially to have a city employee manage private nonprofit volunteers, which for a myriad of different reasons is not feasible, you know, from an insurance perspective and from a legal perspective. So that request itself, though, did suggest that, at least in some form, the volunteer fire company was letting us know that a full-time chief was sort of one of the answers, or the answer to what it needed for its operations. So that obviously forced us to have a deeper conversation about staffing levels and how that would be the answer or the key if that is what happened. So we've obviously submitted several different requests for information. Sometimes we get responses, sometimes we get partial responses. For those that we didn't get responses to, we have followed up because all of our requests have been incredibly direct. They're related to either direct staffing, operational questions, or financials. Just last week, we finally got the 2025 financials that gave a little bit more information as to operationally and staffing, actually both, what we're looking at. So some of the information that we've received from the volunteer fire company include information about their FEMA SAFER grant. So we have the application, the award, things like that. Financial information from the 2022 to present. As I mentioned, we just got 2025 last week. Call information, we've gotten their corporate documents, things like their constitution, their tax filings, and then most recently we got some of their minutes, which identify specific time periods in 1960 where the contracts between the benefited fire district and the city are being discussed. They provided excerpts, sort of real snapshots of minutes that the volunteer fire company has recovered from 1960, acknowledging that there's some contract that exists with the benefited fire district. We haven't received that from county. I'm not exactly sure from the volunteer fire company if they have it and just haven't produced it yet, so that's part of our follow-up with them. From the city side, we don't have a copy. There are references in minutes that there's an expectation that a contract would be signed on the city side, but there's also later references in the minutes that there were some problems with regard to the contracts and the legalese and questions about that. So we have not pinned that down. We're still kind of following through. Everyone is sort of rewriting, piecing together history in this relationship there. We've received a lot of information from county. They've asked for some time. They're still piecing a lot of this together as well. So as far as next step go, we're going to continue to review all the information that we have. We still have some remaining questions about the operations of the current fire department. From what we're understanding, what we're being told, the current operations are not sustainable. The way that it's being managed right now, they've placed volunteers in a very difficult position. I know all of you have heard from them here specifically. We've heard from them as well. So much so that they're really threatening to hang up their keys. So it's a dire situation, and I'm not putting words in their mouth. That's at least what's being represented to us. So the city doesn't want to duplicate that. We're really trying to understand the root cause of that, so that this turnkey operation, we're not just putting it under a different awning. And so that's been a lot of our requests and understanding sort of what the staffing is, and when they're talking about a paid chief, why that is the answer or why it's not the answer. As part of the FEMA information that we got, there actually was a FEMA grant that the volunteer fire company received that provided funding for a full-time position. It's called a grant administrator position, but some of the duties overlap with duties similar to a fire chief position. They're not identical, but there's some that have some management and some of those administrative burdens that we heard about. And the amount of that, from what we understand from the documents, was $50,000 for the first year, and then it was increased annually after that. In 2024, that $50,000 full-time salary was paid to Keith Schneckwath for that position in the full amount. So they did receive that reimbursement in 2024. With the 2025 financials, what we have seen is that the volunteer fire company has not requested full-time reimbursement for that position for this year. I don't know why. That's part of some of our follow-up, trying to understand the change with the dire situation and knowing that that funding mechanism is directly available. It's been something they've used before, but is not being requested this year. We got a little bit more information at the end of last week about the specific hours that are being worked by Keith in that grant administrator position. I understand it is about 20 to 25 hours a week currently, and that it is being worked on evenings, nights, and some weekends. It's not exactly clear when it switched to the 20 to 25 hours versus a full-time position. So we're just trying to get an understanding of that switch from a staffing perspective to make sure that we're really understanding what the key is, right? What the answer might be to smooth operations and addressing a lot of the concerns that they've been talking about and bringing forward. So don't have clear clarity on all of that. Let's see, some other notes on the grant. Our next steps, we still have some information that we're getting from the fire department, hoping that they'll, continue to answer some of those questions or answer ones that have not been answered yet. We are directly engaged with county and the benefited fire district 3 in conversations about what fire protection services will look like for this area. It's been provided by one service provider for over 60 years. So having these conversations separated or bifurcated, at least the county attorney and I's position is that's not productive. The same tax dollars that have been funding the volunteer fire company could potentially fund exactly what the next step is. And it's the same service area. So we're committed to having that conversation with them simultaneously to understanding what the operations were, what questions they have, what questions we have, what hasn't been answered, and really evaluating what options exist for that next step. So now that was a lot, but if there's any questions, let me know. And Nevada, if I left anything out, please jump in.
I don't see anything that jumps out at me. Questions from council that we can answer?
Well, I have comments, not necessarily questions. One is the Eldridge Volunteer Fire Company's been providing coverage since 1905 for the same area. It's just outside the corporate limits. They were charging a fee until the benefited fire district was established in 1960. That's one point. Benefited Fire District number 3 and Eldridge corporate limits is two different things from the documents that the county attorney sent out. So it may look the same, it may not look the same. I don't think we necessarily have to talk about turnkeying it over to a paid department. I think there's ways we could look at it and have a paid individual chief running it and still have a volunteer association separate from that responds to calls. My take is a bunch of those guys still want to do it. They don't want to leave our town high and dry. So there's some differences there. Benefited Fire District 3, I don't have the understanding of why that's even holding this up. The volunteer fire departments are privately held that charges the city of Eldridge for fire protection and gets paid by Benefited Fire District 3 to provide insurance out there. There's a lot of things that we can do to help them. And I don't think it's been adversarial by any means by the information I sent out to you guys Monday, I believe. So I think it's working through it. I encourage every council member to get a hold of the fire department, go talk to them. That's what I did. That's how I got that information. If we need something, let's go talk to them and ask. I don't blame them for getting an attorney involved. We got an attorney involved. I don't mean this in a bad way, but if you're going to be in negotiations, you want to negotiate from the same level. So they went and got an attorney. I don't hold that against them. Our original task was tell us what we have to do to consider this. I think the only thing the fire department's waiting to hear is if we're committed to doing this. It's going to take many steps to go through the process. If they only do Benefited Fire District 3 in the future, their calls will be cut substantially. Then if we have to provide fire protection for our community, a brand new pumper's $800 grand, an aerial's 1.5 million, a building's probably going to be a couple million. That's something we'd have to come up with. Where in fact, they're looking at just taking the titles, transferring them to us, taking the property, deeding it over to us. Then we function from there there will have to be a 2080E agreement with Fire District 3 to clean that up. You know, to try to find a document from 1960, there may not be one. They might have discussed it, but at the time, Eldridge Fire Department, volunteer fire department, was already providing fire coverage for those areas. So there may not be a document, even though it was discussed. I don't know. But to go back 60 years and hold everything up because we can't find a document from 1960, I think is a far stretch. They've been cashing checks from the fire district ever since. So I think there's precedence there. It's established. We just have to be willing to figure out a way to work through it all.
I don't see it as that simple, Brian. It is a huge puzzle. But I want to ask a question there. How were you able to get these financials when the city has been asking for them for 2 months? How were you able to get that?
Well, in some of their previous meetings here and in the paper here recently, they said, if you want some, come up to the station. I went up to the station and got it.
Then explain to me then, it wasn't for, then for 10 days, it was 10 days later that we get financials from the fire department that you had already had. And you had them for 6 days and you sent them to us. And you were out of town. I get that. I understand that.
I got them on a Tuesday and I did send them. I was out of town Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I didn't have access to my outbound email. I emailed them out to council on Monday morning because I asked them, do you want this to go to council? If they didn't want them to go to council, I wouldn't have taken them. If I get information, I'm obligated to share it with the council and I share it with the city administrator.
True. My concern is, so then you got them on Tuesday. And the night before, we had agreed that we were gonna have Nevada and Jeff and Allison reach out to them to get them. But you went and got them and you got them and that's great. But then at the end of the week, Allison takes time and sends us a very long, detailed memo, an update. And in that memo, it says we do not have the financials. And in a sense, we did. And so that, to me, that's kind of a waste of Allison's time that she has said that. And I also had great positive conversations with a member of the fire department last weekend at Grand Haven. And I said, why can't we just get the financials? And he goes, we're working on that, Scott. And you already had them, and we hadn't had them. And so that just raises questions to me why we didn't have them at the same time you did. And I understand how you got them, but it just seems kind of funny to me. And I think that once you engage legal counsel, I think that the communication should go between the lawyers or between city staff and the lawyers. And if it's my understanding that's been the protocol in the past, and if it's changed, then I think we just all need to know how the game is played.
Well, first of all, Scott, it's not a game. I went up on Tuesday night for their business meeting, as they suggested we do in a meeting here, and it was printed in the paper. Any council member that wants information, go to the fire station. I can't help it that no other council member took the initiative to go there. After our last meeting, I talked to a council meeting outside and said, I could probably go to the fire station and get it. He says, well, get it. And that's exactly what I did. I got it and distributed it to all council members and the city administrator. Have any of you guys gone up there or talked to them and asked for anything else?
It's my understanding, like I said, that we have attorneys and city staff that we have engaged to have this, go through this process. If you get too many cooks in the kitchen, it gets really messy. And I think that's part of the problem that we have.
But Scott, I don't disagree, it can get messy, but it can also, something that's stagnant, push it to start it in the right direction again.
So when the city, or when the fire department sent their communication to us last Thursday, they didn't send it to Allison. They didn't send it to Vada. They didn't send it to Jeff. They sent it to the council and the mayor. So they went a whole different route. And when you sent it to us, I don't believe you sent it to Allison. And Nevada got it. Jeff didn't get it. And so I think we just all need to be on the same page here, and I'm not certain that we are.
I asked them if they wanted it sent to all council members, and they said yes. And that's exactly what I did. I also included Nevada, knowing that she communicates with Allison on a regular basis where I do not.
So moving forward, do we just contact the fire department ourselves? Do we work through city staff? Do we work through Allison? What's the protocol moving forward?
I still think we need to define what checkboxes need to be accomplished to move this forward. You know, Jeff's had a thing for a fire chief draft for months.
Yep.
I've asked many times about a draft of an ordinance, so if we do work it out, we could accept the fire department assets. We haven't started on that.
We have, the first time that you asked for it, I started on it, and I do have a draft, but I just figured it's premature to approve an ordinance when we're, you know, if you want me to send it out, I can. There's some stuff that needs to be decided. Most of them across the state are very, very similar to each other. There's not a lot of differences, but there's a couple of items that the council need to discuss, whether they want to include it or not. But
I mean, we've been having serious discussions on this since March. We're not that much further down line than we were in March. We have some additional information, but we still haven't committed whether we're even gonna entertain accepting the assets from the Eldridge Volunteer Fire Company, Inc. or not.
In my opinion, the biggest frustration I have right now is the way this information's coming out. And I know that they put it in the paper and they've told you that just come up and look at it. I think we're past that. I think when you have city administrator, city staff, city attorney, and you also have an attorney, you request that information, that should come then through them. It shouldn't be one of us at one at a time go up there and look at that stuff. Just give us the information. And if you walked up there, and I told you that night, because I was frustrated too, I said, if you can get it, Brian, get it. And clearly you got some stuff. But if it was right there that easy, why did they just send it in for all of our requests for the last how many weeks and months? That's what doesn't add up to me. That's my frustration. If they want out so bad, I would have been jumping for joy to give the information out if I was them. And they haven't. So again, that's a red flag for me right now. Now that we've got additional information, I think it's prudent of us to let the attorneys and city staff look at it and decipher it and then present the opinions to me, because I'm not an attorney. I'm not gonna be able to read what was law in 1960 and what's changed and try to line up that. Again, to me, the Benevolent Fire District and the Eldridge Volunteer Fire Department and how those intermingle, that's not my concern. My concern is the operations. Is turnkey or not turnkey, we paid a 40-hour full-time position in 2024. It did not improve. We are paying a part-time position in 2025. It's still not improving. So because it's paid by the city's checkbook, how is it going to change? That's what I don't know. That's what I want, all this information. I want it to be presented to us in a full package once we have everything. We still haven't got the answers on the FEMA grant, whether that is truly transferable or not. And I know we talked about they would still be the Eldridge Volunteer Fire Department, but if you're taking and using that money towards a paid department / volunteer, is that legal according to FEMA as well? We don't have those answers. So
And there's
that's,
no guarantee FEMA's gonna be around, and we have that
Right.
FEMA grant is not guaranteed for the future.
so I think the biggest thing we can do right now is figure out what, if anything, are we missing, and collectively continue this together, but all be on the same page. That's what I want.
I think it's important that we, and I think we're close to getting all the information that we need. I mean, I think we've made some great steps here. But then my feeling is, then it's time for the city staff, Jeff and Nevada and Allison, to dig into that information. Much like they did with the garbage information that you requested. You know, they gave us a very detailed report on why it's not feasible for us now to do our own garbage collection. I would assume that they would provide the same kind of rationale, pro or con, moving forward. And that's what we pay these guys to do. Now, then they need to come up with some kind of a transition plan, put it together so we can see the numbers and talk about it. Maybe present it to the fire department. They may not even like it because they want status quo and we aren't sure status quo is not working. And so we've got to figure out what will work. And that goes back to the root of the problem. We still have not addressed the root of the problem, which is burnout and lack of manpower. There are just so many pieces to this puzzle that I think that we just need to do our due diligence, and we have to be deliberate about this. And I think that we have to let our city staff take care of this and move down that path. This is not my thing, but a city resident who follows this, has followed this debate, discussion, issue, said it like this. Say you're Kishnaklaw, and you're a fire chief, and you come across a structure fire. And your job as fire chief is to assess the situation to the best of your ability between you send anybody into that fire. And then you have to determine which resources you're going to use to put that fire out. And I'm not saying here by any means that the fire department's on fire, but it's the same kind of analogy. We need to assess the situation and determine what needs to be done to make this happen. And we're close to getting that information, but we're not there yet. And it starts with honest conversations. And I would disagree a little bit, Brian. I wouldn't say that it hasn't been adversarial, but it hasn't been pleasant, some of our discussions. You know, I can remember the meeting that we had here. It wasn't the most pleasant discussion. I was not at the August 14th meeting, but what I've heard is that wasn't necessarily a pleasant discussion and didn't go as planned. I just think that in a way we've kind of taken our eye off the ball a little bit here, and I think that we need a reset. And I think we need to we just got to caught up in a lot of he said, she said. The city's not giving us that. The city doesn't want us. The fire department's not giving this. We've had all this going back and forth for the last 5 months, maybe more important, the last 3 months. And we have to get past that. We need to be better than this. And our citizens deserve for us to be better than this. And we need to move forward on the same page with honest and open conversations. And I just think that we've kind of lost that a little bit.
Scott, I don't disagree with you on a lot of that. That's why a couple of weeks ago I did what I did. So the result of that was exactly where we're at tonight. We're having an open and honest discussion in an open meeting where everybody around the table gets to hear it.
And you're right, and thank you for getting that. But I still don't understand, I'm with Ryan. And that's where I have, not a red flag, but a yellow flag, why they couldn't give us the information that we requested as far back as August. Why did it take that long? And then secondly, why would I have a conversation and ask for it and I'm told we're putting that together? Well, you already had it. That's just a yellow flag to me, Brian. And these are all good people. And my fear in all of this is going to affect friendships. It's going to affect relationships until we can all get on the same page. And nobody wants that. We all agree the fire department is a vital, vital part of our city. Our residents expect them to respond, and they should. And that's a non-negotiable. And we now have to figure out how we're going to make that happen.
Well, we have a responsibility as a council to provide fire protection for our residents, period. That is our responsibility. Nevada and Allison have been putting information together. Their role in the whole thing is to get the information and present it to us as a council and give us a recommendation. At the end of the day, it's 5 elected people around this table, whoever they are, that's going to make the final decision. Bottom line, if we need something, we're not getting it, let's use the means possible. Allison, if you can't get it, let us know.
Which is fine, with all due respect, I have completely and wholeheartedly respected the volunteer fire company's directive to go through their attorney. I have not attempted to have separate conversations. I've encouraged council to not do the same. It creates more work. And there's information I didn't know about, and I'm sending out recommendations. I'm having conversations with county. it's just, we've tried to be as objective and forward-moving as possible, and making information requests and being told that's not relevant, I'm not answering that. We haven't been met with the same type of response on our side from the volunteer fire company. I have done nothing but respect their request. It's unethical for me. I mean, no attorney can contact a represented party without consent. That's just the law. And so it's a very delicate situation anyways. That's not just city policies, that's just standard practice with represented parties. So was never my intention. I completely agree with you. It's my job to gather the information. I've done so in what I would consider a completely non-adversarial way. Asking questions, explaining when someone doesn't understand why something is relevant. I don't think we've gone even remotely to a second level of relevance. Everything is directly connected to their operations and their staffing needs so that we can understand that. Because you're right. There's 5 people who need to make that decision, but it has to be an informed decision. I have an email from their attorney directing me to direct you to make a motion to create an ordinance for a department that we don't know what it would look like. And if you tell me you think it'd be a good idea for me to recommend status quo, when status quo is defined as a dire situation, I'm not comfortable doing that. I don't know any reasonable person that would be. I don't think anything has been stalled. I would disagree that the county or the benefited fire district is an unnecessary party to this conversation. It has been one service area for a very, very long time. Contracts were created. The benefited fire district and the volunteer fire company know that. They have notes on it. There's contracts that exist. So when the volunteer fire company says, I've been funded for 60 years by 2 taxing bodies, but I'm going to give all my assets to one, I'd love to see what those contracts say. County has an interest in that as well. And if those contracts cannot be recovered, we at least need to exhaust due diligence in making sure that we cannot recover those. So there's a level of comfort from a legal perspective, I think, that needs to be exhausted here before decisions are made. And I am not one to suggest, well, they're really frustrated and they've demanded you make a motion. It needs to be an informed decision when it's made.
I think we can all agree that the people on the volunteer fire department are doing their best. They're good people. They have full-time jobs, and they're trying to, hold this together, piece it together, and there is burnout because, they're at, what, 618 calls for the year right now. Some of the calls can be questionable, if it was transport only, or if it was, cancellations from other towns, but that's when their pagers went off, so they had to do it. Volunteers for over 60 years, if you look at it from the 1905, or if you look at it from the 1960, we had volunteers doing their books way back when. So then if you don't remember, we had a lot of times, I know when I was at the fire station, I was carrying books and file cabinets from downstairs where the office used to be to upstairs. And then, there's some file cabinets up there, there's some, it's hard. It would be hard for me just to walk into that fire department right now and say, you know what, I'm gonna go back to 1960 and I'm gonna find you these minutes. It's gotta be taking them some time to find this stuff just because they're not in it all the time. I feel that, they're not gonna leave us high and dry. I've worked side by side with them over 20 years. But the last meeting, I stated that I would follow up with Nevada and the attorney, and I did the next day. And, I want to know what we needed to do, which then at that time caused the memo on Friday, if I remember correctly. And then Monday, we got the information from you. On the weekend though, I was told, hey, if you want to come down and get anything, let us know. We'll meet with you at the fire station so you get all the information. But you'd already had it. But I didn't know about it. But I thought that was weird on Monday when you gave us that, and they're still asking me to come down. So in my mind, it's not that I didn't want to take the initiative to go there, because I'm more than happy to. I have a great relationship with all of them. But I don't want to muddy the waters because I don't know what I can and cannot ask for legally. They have attorneys, we have attorneys. What can I do to help the process and not hurt the process? That's why I was waiting for legal counsel to tell me, hey, if you would just give me a list of X, Y, Z, what you need to check off, I will go to them and ask them. You know, they come to Grand Haven, you know, quite often. I'm still with Medic. I see them in calls at 2 in the morning every week. You know, and they're very social, they're very nice to me. I don't have any issues with them whatsoever, so I'd be more than happy to ask them that, especially being on the committee we are, you know, for the safety committee. I just didn't want to slow the process down. So, you know, the FEMA grant, you know, to me, I would really like to know, because that's on retention, you know, but is that something we could use for, you know, the paid chief once we get them? Is it something we can use to make the firehouse where we can house people? You know, are we able to use that? That's why I'm very interested in that FEMA grant, more than anything, because I think the notion of it was to increase volunteers and also retain them. But if we can build the firehouse, you know, where it's useful and they could stay there, you know, could we use some of that money to do that too? So that's why I'm interested in that FEMA grant, not really anything else, to be honest with you, because I want to know if it can help us in the future and how we can move forward with it and how it's going to help both sides grow and really proceed. So I don't see that, you know, I guess I'm just looking for legal counsel of what I can do to help on the safety committee, but yet I don't think Ryan and I want to muddy the waters and do something wrong which would hurt our progress.
I will say 2 weeks ago from tonight, at the meeting, you can go back and check the minutes or watch the owl. We kept talking about, we need this year's financials. That's what we're waiting on. That was on Monday night. Tuesday, I went up to the fire station, their business meeting, and asked them for what they had. Now, I think they're through September 20th or whatever I sent out to you. So I got the financials. I left town Wednesday morning, didn't have an opportunity to scan them in and send them to everybody. Now, if we need stuff, let's get it and keep going forwards. But just to say we don't have this, you know, the fire department, every time I hear that siren, I thank them guys every day. Dan, you know, I was on the truck for a long time. I was the president for a long time. I wrote some of the minutes in some of those books. And it's a daunting task as a volunteer to keep up with all that. You know, I didn't see a problem going up and getting the information the city needed because the avenues we were taking up to that point, we weren't getting them. And I'm trying to advance the conversation and work through this to help the guys that I thank every day when I hear the siren go off.
And I think we all feel that way, Brian. We are so grateful for them, and we're sympathetic and empathetic. And like you two, I was the secretary of the fire department. I wrote some of those minutes too. You know, so I understand totally what you're talking about. But we just have to be able to determine, moving forward now, what is our communication gonna be? Is it gonna be with Jeff and Nevada and Allison? Is it gonna be us? And I think that has to be communicated with the fire department as well. I mean, I don't know if they've taken advantage of the relationship with you, but I feel like you've got more information than we've gotten.
For the record, I still respond to structure fires and accidents.
I'm sure you do, and God bless you for that. I mean, seriously. But, and I also want to just talk about the safety committee. I think we're past the public safety committee now. I think with everything going on now, I think it needs to be council discussion, and that's not a knock on Dan or Ryan on that at all. We all need to hear what's going on and what's being said.
That was my whole thing from 2 weeks ago, Scott. Thank you.
Well, we're here tonight, right? But I think we need to identify what path moving forward is going to look like and how we're going to get there and how fast we can get there. And if it's a reset, we need to have a reset.
I mean, do we have a committee of the whole meeting, a joint meeting with council in the fire department?
So we have upcoming meetings scheduled with county to go through some additional information. They're evaluating the same information we are with regard to operations. So if, I would just request that we be allowed to look at that information, meet with county so we understand what their position is, and then allow council to decide what next steps to take before we would have another joint meeting, because I don't know what that purpose would be at this point in time.
and I would agree that I would look for direction from council before we make that meeting, so that you guys can digest all the information that you have, and at that point, when you feel you've got all the information that we're gonna have, or all the information that we requested at that point in time, give us your input on, and then we schedule something.
We need to put a time frame on it. I don't want this to drag out for another 6 months. You know, if the county doesn't have the information, or we don't have the information in a month or so, I think that's a reasonable amount of time. We host a committee of the whole meeting with the fire department, public meeting for everybody to hear the discussion and plan it for more than just 1 hour.
I'm kind of with Allison on this. I'm not certain we're quite ready to have the fire department discussion yet, because we aren't really sure what we're gonna find. And I think that we have to give Jeff and Nevada and Allison time to put together all this information and some recommendations so that we can talk about it, you know, I don't wanna say internally, but they need to talk internally and then bring it to us. I don't think that we're ready yet for all of this yet.
So Scott, I'm suggesting that if we have questions, we can ask them at the committee of the whole meeting, public meeting. So everything's on the record.
Allison, my question is, you know, what boxes do you still need checked? And not only from the fire department, but from county. Can you help us out just a little bit with things that would help you?
Yeah, so, I mean, I had a great discussion with county last week, and we're in the process, they're getting back to us on when we're gonna be scheduling a meeting. It might be this week, it might be next week. They asked for a little bit of time. I've been non-adversarial in respecting their request to get some information together. So that meeting, I think, will be very helpful. I think that is absolutely our next step. As far as the fire department goes, we just got the 2020, or I just got the 2025 financials. So we're looking through that information and the information that we just got from their attorney regarding the FEMA position going from full-time to part-time, the hours that are being worked. So we'll have some follow-up on that. But until we review that information, I don't think we're in a comfortable position to call a collective meeting to ask those questions. So I think we have some additional avenues we should exhaust before we collectively get back together. I am all for a public meeting and asking those questions and walking through those. I just do not think that we are there yet. And I feel like we continue to be scrutinized for not having fruitful discussions and moving forward, but we are not the ones not producing information. The more processes we create, the more side conversations, you know, and all of that. I think if there's a collective commitment that that's the path forward, and everyone reiterates that with the fire department the same way I have reiterated that respect for their request to go through their attorney, I think we will move forward and avoid any further detours or delays. We are being punished for delays that I do not think we are responsible for.
And this is not a knock on anybody, but I think if, as evidenced by the last time we got together, it gets emotional. Those guys are passionate. I mean, they're hurting, and I understand that. And I think that there's more other kind of discussions to have before we get to that point, so that the emotions don't come into play, and we can have a plan. And that's not a knock on them or us or anybody else, but it needs to be, we need to take the emotions out of it. And I think it would get emotional with them.
Good. Also, if I could ask you a question, please. You have commented, we were discussing this, that separate talks are not productive. Can you go in a little more detail, especially for the public, as to what you mean by that? Which party has been stagnant with coming to the table? And is there any reasoning as to why that is occurring?
So we have not provided information that's been requested of us at any time. There's no pending request for information on the city side. I've already identified several times. We submitted multiple information requests for the 2025 financials and some other information regarding the FEMA grant that we just got last week. So I don't know the explanation for that. It's been a bit of a moving target, and I mean that in the most respectful way possible. I'm trying to understand the reasons for some of the objections or not providing that information from the volunteer fire company. We've explained the basis for that. I've entertained the questions that have gone back and forth. So as far as I'm concerned, if anything has been stagnant, we have remained consistently engaged with county and with the volunteer fire company in these discussions. So while you guys may not have seen it, we took what you requested very seriously. We've been reviewing information, we've been researching things, we've been on the phone. and had several phone calls and meetings and are setting up additional ones. So as far as I know, there's no information that's been requested of the city that's not been provided. County has asked some time to put some information together. I agree that that's fine, and give them some time to put that together, a week or two for our meeting, for our forthcoming meeting. But the fire company has been somewhat of a moving target in terms of when they're providing information, and it's even in the same subject categories. We'll get financial information up to 2024, but then they wouldn't give us anything current. So I didn't understand the objection to that. If they want to go turnkey, we really need to understand their operations. They are hurting. You're right. We've heard that. Their operations from an employment perspective, if you ask us to draft a department and what it looks like and what would be healthy and productive, changing it from a volunteer fire company heading to just a city department isn't the answer, from what I understand. And until we understand what the root cause of it is, these information requests are directly relevant to understanding what that would look like and what that recommendation needs to be. That answers your question.
Thank you for that. And I hope with hearing this, and with this being recorded, that all parties will understand that yes, we would like to move forward with something, and that this will spur open dialogue amongst our representation with the city, with the county, and also the Eldridge Fire Department, so we can come to a common conclusion and we can have informed discussion regarding the information that's been presented. Allison, I thank you for your communication. You have, correct me if I'm wrong, but you have mentioned that you've been reaching out for annuals and have not gotten that, and have been open with us regarding that. So I thank you for that. And Brian, thank you for reaching out as well, and your guys' work that you have done. And again, I concur with the rest of you guys, utmost respect for the individuals who are serving on there and those who are looking to serve. So even explorers who are concerning careers within fire safety. But for us to move forward, we definitely need work amongst the city representation, the county, and also the Eldridge Fire Department. And until that gets done in open, honest communication and being forthcoming and transparent, then this, unfortunately, will continue to stagnate. So I hope that this helps spur dialogue and that we can come to a common conclusion here rather soon.
I told everybody around this table back in March, we're already in trouble, you just don't realize it, as far as long-term fire protection of the town. We can't afford 100% paid fire department. There's no way. It's gonna have to be, I don't know of a better term, but a hybrid, something similar to what Bettendorf did years ago. They had a paid and they also had their volunteers. I mean, that's the kind of stuff we need to look at and check and see, how do we do that? I mean,
And you're right. I mean, you said it back in March, and that's true today. We can't afford a full-time department. So now we let Nevada and Jeff and Allison work through this, come up with some discussion points that we can talk about and move forward. And can we agree that they should be our contact people as we go down this road? Is that understood or not?
I'd say that's consensus.
Yeah. If they have legal representation, I think it's best, because I think it's tricky and items out there, nobody wants to misquote, with this. Not that this is a battle, but this is something we want to help them. And I think it's important with that since they do have an attorney, that let's let the attorneys work through this and then get our communication from our attorney. I think that's best moving forward, just to be honest with you.
if you do aggregate amount spent on attorneys on this between the city and the fire department, I think it's amazing how much we've cost the taxpayers. If it's a privately held company and somebody wants to donate that to the city, it shouldn't be that difficult. I mean, yeah, there's gonna be details we have to work out. We're not talking about another taxing entity. We're talking about a privately held nonprofit corporation. You know, I just hate seeing, we need some answers. If our Nevada and Allison can't get it, I have no problems getting it to keep pushing this along. And I said earlier, I don't blame the fire department for having an attorney. We brought one in first. You know, hindsight, maybe we should have sat down and had a few more discussions before bringing in the attorneys. You know, to get the legal paperwork in order that we needed. But I think this has gone on long enough. We need to keep pushing through this and see what we can work out, if we can work it out. Because either way, we have an obligation to provide fire protection for our residents.
I think we all agree, but I do disagree. I think it was important for Allison to be here throughout this process. I think she's given us sound advice and has dealt with us in the right way. And so I think as a city, and given our history of people suing us and watching us under a microscope, I think we needed to dot all of our I's and cross all of our T's, and I think Allison helped us do that. Now, for them to get an attorney, that's definitely their prerogative. I get that, and I'm with you. I don't like the fact that we're giving them money to hire an attorney to talk to us, and that's unfortunate. It's right, basically, that's what it is. Same way with the utility board last year, or 2 years ago. You know, we paid for someone to sue us, which made no sense. But I think Allison has given us sound advice, and I think we need to move forward. I think we have a plan. I think with Jeff from Nevada and Allison leading that charge, I think that we can make progress.
I think we have made a lot of progress just by holding it tonight.
You told me today that you're very direct, and that's true.
Well, 2 weeks ago, all I heard is we haven't had these financials, we can't get them. I did talk to Councilman Yossi out the parking lot. I said, well, if you can get them, go get them. Well, next night I went to their business meeting and asked for them.
All right, let's move on.
Well, I think the consensus here is to let the administration do their job with the attorney. As I mentioned at the last meeting, when this adventure started, there was 2 parties involved. Now there's 3 parties involved. And that other party as well has at least one, if not multiple attorneys, that be in the county. I fix cars for a living. I'm not an attorney. So to try to sit there and say, I know what they're talking about, 3 different attorneys, that's over my pay scale. That's what we pay them for. We're talking about the fact that we donate, we give money to the fire department for the protection that we appreciate that they do, to give to their attorney, to talk to our attorney, to talk to the county attorney. So I think it is truly best if we can help along the way, but ultimately we need to let the people that we're paying talk to each other, let the city administration do their job. That's what we hired them to do.
Frank, with that, I think it's only appropriate that we get an update at every council meeting. You know, things that have changed from the previous, or just an update.
Yeah, I agree.
Instead of going for a while. I mean, you said it, that's what we're paying for.
Right.
So then,
We've been getting one about every 2 or 3 weeks anyway, haven't we?
Every couple
I think so.
if not more often. And, I mean, I talked to Jeff in Nevada quite a bit.
Microphones, please. Microphones, please.
I talked to Jeff in Nevada frequently. I call them with questions and they get me information. I think anybody else can do the same thing. They're very accessible and haven't had to call Allison, which is probably good because it probably costs us money. So that's why I go through Nevada and Jeff.
well, when I say update, I'm talking about in a public meeting, so it's on the record, so everybody can hear it.
So we all agree to let them move forward? Okay.
Yes.
We'll move on to number 8. The city administrator. Nevada, we have an update on anything else?
Just a few quick updates. We do need to schedule our next joint council and community center meeting. That was supposed to be for December, so unless there's any objections, we'll put that on the December 1st committee of the whole. Our city engineer, Zach, was informed that the traffic signal mast arms have a new completion date of 12/12/25. The contractor has reached out to the supplier for a reasoning as to why the additional delay. We don't have a response on that yet, but as soon as we have that, I will pass that along. The auditors were on site this week and will be wrapping up our financial audit in the coming weeks. Everything from the on-site visit went really well. We got them all of the information they were looking for, so we should be hearing from them within the next 2 to 3 weeks. Our insurance renewals for the employee benefits and health insurance, our renewals meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, the 22nd. I did just get some preliminary information from our agent that we are going to have another decrease, so that's definitely good news because we had a sizable decrease last year. So I expected at least just a minimal increase this year, but we are decreasing again pretty significantly. So that's good news. And the city update breakfast, just a reminder that that is this Thursday at 8 a.m. at Grand Haven.
It'll be very good food.
Always is.
Nevada, on South First Street, part of the overlay project, right where they blended it back into the First Street First Street McClare Road project, there's a pile of dirt on each side of the road. Can you check with Tony or Zach and see what that dirt's there for? If nothing else, it needs to be removed, because if that freezes, it's gonna cause havoc on our snow plows.
Thanks, Nevada. Jeff, do you have an update for us?
Thanks, Mayor. Just a couple of development things that have come up in the last few weeks. Ivy Acres is starting to work on their infrastructure, and I've been told that they should have the street finished connecting to Price Street on the west side of their development finished by the end of November. So there'll be 2 entrances and exits into that development yet this year, which is good. And Mr. Grunwald has submitted a final plat for his Grunwald Grove 3rd Edition, which will be in front of the Planning and Zoning at the end of this month, and hopefully in front of you guys for approval the first meeting in December.
Thanks, Jeff.
Jeff, do we still have on the books that you can't start a new home except for the lot adjacent to where the street ends?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
So typically, the street has to be in before they start a home, although you can do it, if the street ends at this, the very next lot you could build a home on, because until they get the streets in, the infrastructure in, it affects the gravity flow for the sewers and everything. Could you check with Ray to see?
Sure.
On Ivy Acres, I think they've got some foundations in that are way beyond the end of the current street.
Okay.
Well, seeing how the police chief's not here, I'll make a motion for adjournment.
Second.
Motion, Dr. Drake, second by Yossi to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Nay. We are adjourned.
Jeff, I think there's something on the ordinance about that.